pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Dave doesn't have attendance, so I'm going to keep going.
Yep, we'll go off.
All right, next up is the agenda approval. Is there any additions, Brian? It looks like
Yep, I had two additions. HFEA signed up to speak at open forum, and we have an employment adjustment for someone we just approved at the last board meeting. We had the salary wrong, so just looking for committee for that.
All right. Does anybody have any questions regarding changes to the agenda? If not, I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second. There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Next up is the consent agenda. Oh, next up is open forum. Rules for open forum. 3 minutes per speaker. Open forum shall not take more than a total of 15 minutes. No complaints about individual staff members, about students, or about other persons at a public meeting. All presenters will conduct their business in a manner that meets community standards for decorum. The board will not take action on items presented in the open forum. The board may respond in writing at a later date. Does anybody wish to speak in the open forum? Go ahead, Joe Ranger.
Sweet. Hi, good evening. I'm not going to read from the script. Good evening, my name is Joe Ranger. I've been a teacher at Hinckley-Finlayson for 16 years now. Well, we're working through 16. I'd like to claim that I'm just a science teacher, but I've taught more classes in this high school than I care to admit that are outside my area of expertise. Taught somewhere between 1,800 and 2,000 students in my time here. I believe that I have served Hinckley-Finlayson to the best of my abilities. I've taught members of your families, volunteered, coached their sports, and tried to find work of your small businesses. And I've tirelessly worked to try to uphold the values of the community and the school district. Hinckley-Finlayson's motto is that every student, every person is known, valued, and challenged to succeed. And I wish to discuss some of the school board goals that we have. We have many school board goals. Today I wish to talk about the one that is ultimately, what does it mean to be fiscally responsible? Now, I know what you have here is a tireless, thankless job. I understand that innately, and I appreciate all the work here that we do. My goal here is for us to think about the plans that we've had in place and the policies that we've looked at for all 16 years that I've been here. As far as I know, for 16 years, the school board goal is always to save 25% of our annual budget. And from my understanding and my research, we have never undershot that goal. I'm not here to ask you to break the bank, but there is plenty of reason to look at the idea of reducing that overall savings goal to something a little bit lower to provide for our students, our communities, and our families. We've heard a lot this year about the reductions that need to be taken place and what it means to be financially responsible. We have young men and women here that have heard that and have seen that, and we've all felt the hurt. What I'm asking you to do is to consider the ideas that we are trying to stop the bleeding per se. We're trying to stop losing students. We need to try to stop giving people reasons to go other places. I'm standing in front of you as a staff member, as a father, as a parent of kids that are in this district, and they are looking for help. We have our finances be public, and I'm not asking you to go deep into the well, but what I'm asking you to do is to put the responsibility back into kids to get them to stay here, to provide things for them that maybe we're not used to. It's not a question of ignorance, and I don't want to call it negligence, but we're looking for the ideas to just put our best foot forward and not immediately assume that these things that need to just be on the chopping block. Investing in our schools isn't just about education, it's about building a thriving community. We're trying to invest in student resources and staff retention. That's another big school board goal. We want to try to hire the best people and keep the best people here. It's hard, especially when we have a lot of new teachers, to tell them everything is going to be okay. It's hard to look at young people and tell them that everything is going to be okay. Every dollar spent on education comes back in form of a stronger economy, safer neighborhoods, and a better future for everyone. What I'm asking to do is just think about, to take a hard look at not just doing the status quo, things that we've been doing for 16 years and watching it go up and down and up and down. I'm advocating for doing more for our students than saving a quarter of every dollar to save money on an imaginary purpose that is neither intentionally defined or inherently apparent. Let's try to, as we are as transparent as we can, let's try to take that time, take that effort, take that idea and push it forward. Let's try to promote that positivity by saying, hey, we see that this is working, and you guys respond very well to a lot of this. We came last year and said, hey, we need more help, hey, we need more help, and you guys continue to do that. You provided more resources for us, especially at the high school and the elementary school with our Dean of Students, and they're doing great work and wonderful jobs. What we're saying is, we see that help, we love that help, and we still need more. We can't work in a skeletal type system. And personally, I would love to see you just come here, come experience what we're seeing every day, and then look, we can make better decisions when we're all in this together. Thanks for your time.
Joe, can I ask you a question?
I love questions.
Okay. Are you specific about staffing? Is that what you're saying? You know, if we adjust the budget, is your focus on staffing? Or what are some of the areas that you're vague?
There's, the answer to that question will always be yes. The answer to that question is always going to be yes. But whenever the intense needs that we have in our area they are never getting smaller. In my 16 years, the intense needs are always getting larger and larger and larger. And it becomes quite a bit of a juggling session to try to juggle all of the needs of everywhere. You know, is staffing always important? Yes. We need more people, more, fully trained, highly qualified staff that will do the best they can with the kids that walk in the door, because we don't get to pick and choose. And so staffing is a very big part. I'm not sure how big of the budget comes out of staffing, but it probably is, payroll is probably a large part of it. But we always need, highly trained staff that are willing to come in and work with the kids every day, and it's tough. I mean, we get the emails once a month of how much more need that we have. So I think that's a big part of it, The facilities are great, but it was tough to see in the audit that they have this much more money than we thought, and then get a really big quick turnaround on the gym floor. Not that I'm saying that it doesn't need it. I mean, I came straight from practice. Like, it does. But that's kind of a tough switcheroo real quick to go from one thing to the next to see. And it's tough to talk to other people about, because they need, more communication, more ideas. When we have a goal, what is the goal? How does the goal drive ourselves forward into what's coming next? Hi.
A question for you.
A lot of questions.
These things that you're saying we're kind of missing, okay? How will that raise grade point average, and how do we raise that? Because would that attract more students?
So, fundamentally, grade point average is not my favorite way to look at things. My best example that I use for kids is my dad. My dad was a Marine. He didn't like school very much. He didn't do school very well for himself. But he still had to do enough in order to make it through. A kid that works their tail off every day, gets a C-, is more important than the kid who sits around and gets an A. Because it means more to them to work all the way through. So grade point average isn't always the best way to look at it. Now when you're talking about like test scores and things like that, that's a one-time deal. That's also tough to measure success. That's why we take multiple levels of things and we're trying to chart growth and see progress and things like that. I mean, kids need stuff. When we're reduced down in staff, it puts heavy pressure on the kids to take the few electives that are available when it's there. If you really want to take welding, the only thing available is 5th hour, is study hall, or whatever else, you might have to wait a cycle. And sometimes that's when we lose kids. You know, so it's a tough balance. I wouldn't want to be in Katie Harl's shoes or Joe's shoes when it comes to doing scheduling, but like having more availability to me seems like a better problem than having less.
Can I fill in real quick?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. You know, it's hard in a small district. The more things you can offer kids, the more you have a chance of hooking them.
Connecting with
You know,
them, yes.
whether it's a sport, whether it's an elective, whether it's a college in the school course that you can run, or you make a priority to run. You know, in the recent past, we've talked about daycare, preschool options. Like those are things like it might cost whatever $40,000 to hold on to 6 students, so it doesn't really pay or break even. But in the grand scheme of things, you know, we're talking about wrestling here. Like those are small things that might only serve a few students, but it might hold hold more people together. And it's kind of a symbiotic thing because you know, when you've got kids are very social, and so their enjoyment of their education is a lot about who's in the building and who's productive and who's working hard to be a C- student, you know, that type of thing. So it's really hard to quantify how those things build off of each other, but point of my rant is offering things, even if it only impacts 3 kids per grade, that really starts to kind of snowball in my opinion, so.
Right. And if I can add to that,
I just want to say one thing quick first though, because we have 3 minutes left to open forum. So is there anybody else here that wants to speak at open forum? Okay, then please
I
continue.
maybe forgot what I was trying to say. Looking at,
I'm sorry.
That's okay, I appreciate it. Piggybacking off of that, you know, with the daycare piece and looking at, we've tried to have a lot of efforts into bringing in new people into our district. We talked about the developments being built across the town, I don't live here, I don't know where they are. But I think at the end of the day, those are great conversations to have, but I think an even greater conversation to have is what are we gonna do to keep the kids that we do have right now? So whether that's increased staffing, so that way we have less students in classes. If you are in the elementary school, and if you ever want to, my door is always open. I would encourage any one of you to come to my room, and you can see that it is the cleanest, most well-oiled machine class I have ever had. Because I have a very small class. I can connect with each kid, and it has been absolutely the most enjoyable year I've ever had in this school district. Sorry, Brian. Your class was pretty good.
2 seconds.
2 seconds. Number 2.
Number 2.
So, I think if we can start to have conversations about what are we doing for the kids that we are servicing now, word of mouth will spread on that and be like, hey, they are looking out for students' best interests. They are valuing and they are being challenged to succeed.
Thank you. I have 2 minutes left of open forum, if anybody wants to speak. Otherwise, we'll move on.
Okay, hi, I'm Dan. I've been here a lot over the last few months. This is my son, Bryden. We're big into wrestling. That's what, I mean, I love that sport. It's his 3rd favorite. But it's my favorite. I spend a lot of time talking with the teachers in the school district. Jamie and I, my wife, spend a lot of time volunteering. And when I say volunteering, I mean volunteering. To make sure that we have a baseball team, we have a football team, we have a wrestling team in the school. We spend, quick math, over 1,000 hours a year doing that. And I'm trying very hard to get something at a high school level. And it starts right now. It starts tonight. To make sure we can progress into a high school level with the wrestling program. Baseball, it's well established until it's not. And that's a struggle that we're dealing with. We don't have the kids that we had when I was in school. 20 years ago, 24 years, 21, 22 years ago. I'm well aware I'm aging myself. Thanks a lot. But all these other schools seem to have that, and we got to keep progressing. I don't want to give up here. This is where I grew up. Some of you, I rode the bus with you. I get gas at your gas stations. I do all that stuff. I see you guys every day, and I want to keep it here. I want to be here. I'm a Hinckley kid. I love it here. I don't want to change it. I want to be a part of this forever. So just help us out. I'm willing to help you guys. Help me. That's all I'm asking. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Did I keep it under that 2 minutes?
Yeah, you got it. Next up is the consent agenda. Does anybody wish anything pulled from the consent agenda? All right, then I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda with changes. I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Moving on to budget considerations.
Admin team has been working on some ideas, nothing that we're asking for action on, just things that we've been thinking about. None of this is fun to talk about, but I want to talk about where our revenue projections are as of at least last week. And the two columns that I'll kind of compare to are the last two, where we were last year in June and where we're projected to be, depending what happens at the state legislation, with the state legislation here in the next month and a half. A lot of numbers are pretty consistent. I guess I want to highlight this compensatory revenue, because that's the big one that was very unexpected. Most of the numbers, if they're down, it's tied to what our either enrollment is projected to be or what our average daily membership, which is basically our enrollment factoring in attendance. And certainly we know our attendance is down this year, so that's why most of these numbers are down. But the compensatory revenue is about $280,000 down, and that's not because of enrollment. That is because the state has kind of changed the formula for how that gets impacted or reported. Typically, you may have heard or know, we send home what is typically called free and reduced lunch forms. They're really called educational benefits forms. We saw, and I guess I will rewind, you see a little bit of flux here in the beginning. We saw an increase because, if you remember, during COVID, the federal government paid for lunches and breakfasts. That went away. That's where this kind of spike came in. Last year, the state had a hold harmless. They had already been talking about changing how they come up with this revenue. Last year, they decided to stay with the old method. We actually did better. Now the state is back to, let's use our new method for determining this. Well, meanwhile, we have less families filling out those forms. They're going by direct certification now instead of by both direct certification and free and reduced lunch forms. We don't have as many people filling those out. The governor's bill, proposed bill, does talk about still putting money back towards that, so there is a hold harmless. Right now, that's not approved, so if that doesn't get approved, that's why I have factoring in 280 roughly $1,000 less. That's a big part of why or the biggest part of, besides our enrollment, why we're looking at decrease in revenue. The other part I have in here, we've talked a lot about special ed revenue. That number has been right around that 2.4 million that we've talked about. We have reports from staff, from administration, our special ed numbers do go up, have been continuing going up. We're not factoring more in right now because also part of the governor's proposal is to take away some special education transportation funding. So when working with Ellers on this, we thought we're pretty comfortable keeping it the same because we know our special ed enrollment or special ed needs are increasing. However, we don't know for sure what's going to happen at the state. So that number is another one that we're keeping an eye on. Otherwise, a lot of these numbers are pretty consistent. There's been a lot of questions what's going to happen with revenue from the federal government. We have not heard anything that Title 124 is going away. May it come from a different entity, maybe, but the federal government has said, at least that I've read, that title dollars are not going away. The other big part the federal government helps with is with lunches. We have not heard that's going away, so we're not anticipating right now an impact to our federal income, but I'll just kind of, with the revenue part, bring you to these last two numbers. That's where I come up when we start talking about $800 or more $1,000 is our revenue for our general education fund is down by that much, again, mostly because of enrollment, but the biggest dollar amount one would be that compensatory aid. Are there questions that you have on at least where the revenue's projected as of a week or so ago?
You said the special ed transportation funding is going to go down.
Possibly, yeah.
Is the requirement still going to be
Yes.
about? So they're still going to be required to transport
With less
just
money.
as much? with-
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. So then it brings me to just kind of what we've been talking about. I'll talk about fund balance first, which my math could be enjoyable to follow here, but if you rewind back to June of '24, that's when we set the current school year's budget. At that time, we were predicting that our fund balance as of 7/1/24, which would have been the start of this school year, would be $4,241,548. The audit just came back, so our fund balance was actually $4,763,916. So then we take that number and we have to factor in what our revenue and expenses were for this year. Of course, we're still in March. We don't know how that's going to end, but if we use those predictions that we made at the end of June, at that time after revenues and expenses, and using our fund balance for possibly food service and community education. When we went through that, we were predicting then that the fund balance would end at $4,341,259. Now just starting with the actual fund balance and everything else being the same, which of course it's not, but if everything else would have been the same, the prediction at that time, knowing what the starting fund balance would be $4,863,321. And please stop me if I lose you in my kind of story. To meet the district policy, which again is based on what we predicted the budget to be in June, our current fund balance policy is 25%, and that's of our general fund expenses. So to be at 25%, fund balance would be at $3,863,240. So now with the new actual fund balance, starting with what our fund balance actually was, putting in the predictions, we would be predicted to be at 29.5%, which is $693,802 more. Again, that's if everything we predicted in June goes according to what we planned. simply, the easiest example of not everything going to plan is we haven't been able to hire all of our support staff that we planned, and when we predict new employees coming in, we kind of pick a salary, some we pick high, some we pick low. Now we have actual salaries in there, so those numbers are not perfect, but that's taking what we knew in June with what the audited fund balance was. So are there questions on the first 5?
My only question is, last year when we did the budget, we thought we were going into our fund balance to about 22-point-something%. But without the hirings, it went.
Without the hirings, we had more interest come in and we got a little better special ed revenue than we had thought. And the
year
state,
before that.
and the state doesn't take all the enrollment loss all at once. It's like a formula. It's a gradual. It will come a little bit now, a little bit later. They don't take all 800 some odd thousand away, whatever the dollar amount is.
But I guess what I'm saying is we didn't start at 25% last school year. We went into our fund balance.
We were predicting to go in, because if you remember, we also added at that June board meeting 6 positions. So I had presented a budget that revenue and expenses matched. And then we used fund balance to hire 6 more positions after that, or keep back 6 more positions. The board did vote to approve spending out of the $693,000 up to $300,000 to replace the high school gym floor. We have sealed bids coming in, so we'll know that we have quotes, but we legally have to get sealed bids, so that process is in place. We will have those numbers for the next board meeting, so we know exactly what that is. We talked last meeting that we do need to use LTFM funds before we can use fund balance, which in our LTFM funds, we have $133,000. So of that $300,000 first, which is what we were saving in LTFM for. So we'll take the $133,474, and then after using LTFM and fund balance for the remaining, we would still have $527,276. Questions on that part? So things we're considering, first, I guess I'd like to talk about capital budget. In my opinion, a fund balance is kind of like our own personal savings account. Once you spend out of your own savings account, it's kind of gone. So my thought, which does end up impacting our total budget and impact what our cuts would need to be, if we use kind of capital type purchases, that is a way, doesn't have to be the way, but a way to spend that one-time money on one-time things, where if you put it into salaries, and I'm not saying we can't, those always keep growing and going and are still here. So they kind of both would help each other. I mean, if you put it to salaries, okay, we have more for fund or capital. They kind of both work both ways, but some ideas I had with the capital budget, as you can see, we are total right now at $464,000. My hope was to reduce that down to $50,000 less than we spent last year. The state only gives us, which I can go back to revenue, the state gives us, operating capital. Angela, I may have told you the wrong number here, $140,000. So we have to spend $140,000 on capital. That's what the state gives money for, just for capital projects. I think I told you the wrong number earlier. We could reduce this all the way down to that. There are projects in here that we would still get, just we wouldn't spend them all off capital. We've always historically, at least since I've been here, the state has never fully funded what our capital projects are. We have always funded more than what the state gives us. But there are items on this list that we could bring that down, and it really doesn't matter. My thought was, out of technology, get some of these computers ordered now, because we don't know what could or may happen with tariffs. Same, when we've heard that may affect technology, as well as some of these bigger things that Keith has. Garage door we need to do, but there are things in this list where I could bring that down, either so it's lower by what we were thinking as of now, 50,000 less than this 233, or I could bring it all the way down to 140, which is what the state gives us. Other areas we're looking is, and these next two are because of what our potential class sizes are or our enrollment is. Up to 7 teachers at Hinckley Elementary. One would have to be replaced, the one is because of licensure. Up to 6.2, the 0.2 is we have a staff member requesting to go less than full-time. So up to 6.2 at the high school, but 4 of those would be replaced because of licensure. We have a request from our speech person we're still looking, she's still looking at it, but she has made the request to possibly move to 0.6. With that, we would probably need to hire an SLPA as our speech needs are still there. We're going through classroom material budgets now, but our kind of with the way we set it up this year would roughly be a cost of $4,500. Talking with Mandy Hartle to reduce athletic costs by about $10,000. Now that would be not necessarily going to game. That's not means not trimming games or anything. It's ordering equipment, things like that. Can we make things that we have last another year? We have some reduced summer work time. The other areas that we still need to look at is our other areas. We need to look at custodial, food service, and district office as well. We need to look at all those areas, but these are the ideas of where we're at as of now. But we know we need to look at all areas of our district to see if we can find other areas where maybe we're overstaffed. Like I said, there are positions that would need to be hired back. Most of these are because of licensure. There are 5 teachers, and again, we roughly pick what a dollar amount would be. If the speech person does go down to 0.6, we would likely need to hire back or hire a second SLPA. So with all those proposed ideas and then add backs, we've cut about $678,000, and I should have said I'm starting at about that $800,000. So that leaves, we haven't cut all 800,000, plus we want to give people raises. Certainly want to do that. We have negotiations coming up for our teachers, our support staff will negotiate, and half of our managers will also negotiate. Some other things that we can talk about, things that were kind of added during COVID is why they're on the list, and we've kind of talked about these before. I'm not saying that we're going to, they're just things that did get added. The high school, the second dean of students, the second nurse, and like I said, at that time during COVID, we also added HR, and we need to look and see if there's anything we can do in food service, custodial, transportation, and there may not be, but we are looking at those as well. Questions? I'm talking a lot.
Does Fred help us out with speech?
Not with speech.
Only part C to B. So they do birth to 2, they do some of the home visits, but then when it comes to, so they have an SLP that does some of that speech stuff, but when they're transitioning into the 3s, that's when our speech person gets involved. So they still have to do some of that transitional stuff as well as those last few like home visits.
We have shared that position in the past with East Central. I don't know where that, our numbers are so high that I don't know that that would be realistic, but.
Yeah, there's 3 schools that share that part C to B person, but I think only 2 for the speech.
And do we fund the transition program too? Because a lot of our students still get speech with transition.
It's funded by Pine City, East Central, and Hinckley-Finlayson, where it's divided by the number of students we have ADMs in that program.
Our 18 to 22-year-olds.
Yeah, yeah. Now, kind of going back to fund balance, so back to after paying for the gym floor using LTFM funds. Like I said earlier, we have about 527,000 above what we thought, at least back in June. So here were some of the examples that I had out of capital that we would do that. And again, why I have some of the technology on there is if the board's open to that, we could get those ordered sooner than later before technology maybe it doesn't become a problem, but that's why we specifically picked technology off that. And then I was just picking some bigger dollar amounts to get there. Gas bus is obviously the most expensive on there, but and we could certainly use fund balance to do more. Like I said, we could reduce capital all the way down to that 140,000, but these were the ideas that we came up with for now. Which if we did that, that would leave our fund balance still above 253,000. Again, ideas we could do for that, we could put that into the general fund, just put it there. That would help with staff, maybe save positions, help with not having to cut as much, would help with negotiations. We could spend more on capital. A couple other things we're waiting, or one other big part we're waiting to hear at the state, not that there's not going to be others, but they've funded summer unemployment the last 2 years out of the last budget coming from the state. They have enough in the state budget to fund June. We don't know what's going to happen for July and August. If the state doesn't cover that, the district does. For our district, 3 months, which would be July, August, and the following June, that's, and it's hard to predict, but it's between $250,000, $300,000. I have not factored that in yet. The governor's proposal does have money to cover that. Again, we're not going to probably know that until May. And the other part is, and we've talked about this from years past, do we want to keep our fund balance at 25%? Do we want to drop it? We've talked in the past all the way down to 20. Do we feel comfortable spending more than that as we go? You know, what do we want to do with our fund balance? Do we want it to sit at 25% as we head into next year? Or is there some flexibility like the board's given, or is there more flexibility to go all the way down to 20%? Like I said, we talked about compensatory. We'll talk about co-op sports here in a little bit. But thoughts? That was a lot of talking by me, or questions, or clarifications.
The summer unemployment, is there any look at that changing, or is that gonna be, because after this year, it would be up to the schools to fund it fully?
Correct.
And has there been any legislative talk about changing that?
The governor proposed funding it. I don't know how long his proposal would fund it. It would fund it at least for this, going into next school. It would cover July and August. I would hope June, since that's part of the fiscal year. I don't know how long term. So there's talk, but I don't know where that's heading.
It should cover 2 years, right? It's a biennium budget they put together, so it should cover the next 2 years.
Unfortunately, there's still a lot of unknown, and they're supposed to be done by May 19th. Hopefully they are. If they're not, we kind of have to wait and see what happens, and if there are any other things that, we don't know about that we may have to do as well, but the hard part is waiting and seeing so we get the best picture, yet if we do need to make cuts, also the human being side of, even though cuts are hard, giving people a fair heads up if we have to go down that road.
So by our next meeting in April, we'll see class sizes, what's coming in.
I would anticipate, following feedback from tonight, that you'll start to see reductions coming on the next board meeting. May not see all of them until maybe in May and June. Again, it's trying to keep as many programmings and staff as we can, but also waiting to see what the state's gonna do. But I would anticipate you'll start to see some of these even as quick as our next meeting in a couple of weeks.
What is the estimated percentage of the budget that is spent on staff?
I didn't get to the percentage part, so our budget's roughly 17 million. Was running just some staff number. We spend about a little over 11 million on staff costs, so 11/17, whatever that percentage is. Hold on, calculator. You got me?
64.7%.
So if we went down, if we changed the fund balance to 22.5 again, what would that?
Isn't every percent about $100,000?
Yeah, every 1,000 be about 150. Maybe that's a little high, 140 to 150 for every percent. So that's quite a bit of money, depending how low the board would be willing to go. And I know we can't vote on that today, but just to hear your thoughts so we can prepare, and I can certainly bring a recommendation at the next meeting for our fund balance if there's openness to that. But then it also gives Mrs. Sculler, Mr. Lattimore, and I a little idea of knowing, without knowing, if that makes sense.
Well, if you spend your savings account without any chance of getting it back in the savings account, okay, so how would we get it back in the savings account? Know our students. Okay, so have we identified why they're not coming here? Why they're losing? In a real honest way. And if there's changes to that, because I know it wouldn't be immediate, but it'd be a gradual thing.
Biggest feedback I got, and there's certainly others, was a lot of because of behaviors that are happening in the schools.
Okay, I've heard that too. How do we solve that? I know you can't kick kids out because the state says you can't, so you can't get rid of the bad apples.
Consistency from the top to the bottom, I think is huge.
Who do we copy that has similar population and has it under control? More under control? Any ideas there?
I'd say enrollment in our general area has decreased across, no matter what school we're at. Every principal I've talked to, that's been the case.
Maybe not as high as others, but
Because there's other options, maybe a PSEO or
online
Homeschool.
school. Yep,
Online.
homeschool and online school.
Okay.
We saw a lot of kids go to online school this year.
Well, in our amount of kids open enrolling into Hinckley is down, what, like 30 something?
Correct. Yeah, we
From
have less
previous
kids
years.
and less kids came here from other school districts this year than compared to other years.
So behavior's been an issue for a long time. It's not just recent. So when you look at it, behaviors, how long has this been a conversation?
Probably especially since COVID. Behaviors have always been here in at least my tenure, but I would say they've got all schools will have behaviors. They probably, in my opinion, they've gotten more significant more often since coming out of COVID. That's my opinion now. I'm not in the classroom, but it seems like, from Joe and Bonnie, I hear about things that we'd only hear about never or once in a blue moon more often. I think the frequency is more often, especially since COVID ended.
Were there any other changes that occurred? So if we're trying to pinpoint some things, so consistency is obviously one thing. COVID changed a lot of things, but was there anything else that was changing during that time period? Anything with
During that
curriculum? Is there any,
Well, we had superintendent principal change multiple times. Well, not superintendent, but principal multiple times. Our curriculum hasn't changed. Well,
We
Amplified
changed in
hasn't
reading
changed
and
in.
math, but that we're on year
You're on year
three.
three.
You're on year 3 of it, and year 3 of math as well,
Year
in some
two.
grades.
Well, in some grades didn't.
But all the childcares in the area have gone away. And how many have been lost in the last 2 years just at HES alone? Almost 100.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In 2 years, 100
Right.
kids.
They're kids at Hinckley Elementary.
So I mean,
Or-
and in that time, almost all, if not all, in our district have closed. There might be 1 or 2 in-home ones.
Yeah, a couple have opened up within the last year and a half. I think they fill up pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Our early childhood program used to be 50 kids. We're not even at 40.
And I think statistically, people aren't having as many kids, but that's not the now problem.
Yeah, I think the
That's-
census says they're out there.
Yeah.
Their feelings about, first, the extra fund balance ideas, and then I guess the second question is, once that extra that we weren't planning on is spent, are there feelings about reducing that for going into next school year? So my first are there feelings about other ways to spend that excess that we weren't saving for? It happened. And then follow up, is there feelings about coming in under 25% as we set the budget for next year?
Well, I know we're getting late in the game for a gym floor. I mean, we're getting close. So if they can't get the gym floor done by August, could that get pushed off 1 year and then we put another 100 and whatever of LTFM in there? So then, trying to find my numbers, we have 133 in there. Is that from 1 year or 2 years?
2 years,
So roughly about 60.
65 roughly,
Thousand.
yeah.
So then we would have almost 200,000 in there, but I'm guessing the cost of the floor is gonna go up
Probably.
unless they would,
Probably, unless they hold the
unless
quote.
they'd hold the quote if they can't get it
Yeah.
done.
Yeah, and I won't know their timeline until I know
And we meet
Ooh,
next
we-
Friday, is
the
that correct?
10th, yeah, a week from this Friday.
Oh, two for,
The
oh no,
10th,
a
yeah,
week and a half.
yeah.
Well,
So I won't necessarily know their timeline until I know which company.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, we can try, but they're sealed bids, I don't even know everyone who's bidding.
What was the deadline on those bids? You remember, Brian?
They have to be in the Thursday before we open them, so they come in Thursday, we're opening them the next day, and then we have a board meeting Monday after. So I don't remember the dates off the top, but they come in Thursday, we open Friday, board meeting Monday.
So they're due by the 10th, and we meet
Thank you.
11th. That's only, I guess that's one of my thoughts, if,
And on those bids, there's no completion date? Like when that
It's
comes
just,
out?
we're asking for what it would cost to do that, yeah, then not a completion date. We can ask the companies who reach out to us, what would be your completion date, but we didn't put that in the bid quote.
when we start getting class sizes, can we get like state average, area average with that?
So if we went below the 25%, are we looking at overall lowering it to say 22, 23, or just like last
One
year
time.
doing like a one-time yearly thing?
It's a good question.
We don't have to change our policy.
We don't have, I mean, the board.
We could lower it without changing the policy.
Correct, which
It doesn't have
we
to be.
thought we were doing in June. You all don't have to change the policy, but could still spend it. Like,
Leo, has it always been 25%?
As long as I can
The
remember.
policy has stated to try to stay at
I
25%.
believe so.
I know when we talked about it, it was earlier in the school year, we have the highest fund balance around percentage-wise, which is a good and can be a bad thing. I mean, yes, if there's a catastrophe, we have prepared ourselves for that. We don't want to be where some of these school districts are with having operation debt, things like that, having to go out for, we don't want to get there. But we, especially in the last couple of years, we are at the top of the, at least region 5, 6 between here and St. Cloud, at the top of the list. I don't know that we need to be the top, in my opinion, but we don't want to be the bottom either.
I'm open to being flexible.
Yeah, I'm okay to be facing as well. I would like to see, like you said, we have on this, what we're considering to reduce. All areas.
Yeah.
Transportation, maintenance, food service, district-wide. If there has to be cuts. And is a bus necessary for next year? I mean, is that, I know our fleet is getting older, but with decreased enrollment, is it something that can wait a year? I mean,
We could possibly.
I mean, these big
do that.
purchases, if they could,
How many extra buses do we have, Bruce?
Probably 5.
Are we trading some buses in? Can we trade some buses
We
in, or
can.
are they worth that much to trade in? Probably not.
Basically scrap.
Yeah, I think
They'll give you a scrap price for it.
$1,000.
There was somebody that we had used before. They would take the bus and give you X amount of dollars for a bus, and then you could purchase parts back from them. It's kind of like a salvage yard type situation. No cash involved, just a credit, so you could.
We didn't purchase a bus last year. We purchased one in 20.
Last year we bought van, this school year we bought vans, type 3. We bought a bus last school year.
Correct.
Are all 5 of those extra buses DOT inspected and like ready to go?
Yep.
So they're in good running condition?
So they are passing DOT, as you guys saw, they are also getting old. I think our oldest, we purchased in 07 or something like that, maybe even before. We have some old buses, but they are passing DOT. So could we? Yeah.
Is it hard to get a bus like it was a few years ago?
I don't think so. It's,
if
seems like
we-
all the parts and everything are, it's not like the COVID days where everything was, you couldn't get this or you couldn't get that, and
So if, say we approve a bus next month, how fast are you gonna get that bus?
that I didn't ask him, I guess.
Usually it's September or October when we get them. I don't know if they can go faster. That's what the last one was. We got it in October,
After the school?
after the school year started. And I think we ordered middle of April.
Do we ever run out of buses in, like, say, spring sports, where you got all 5 of them being used?
if I can find some more drivers.
Yeah, it's more we run out of drivers.
Not the bus.
Not as of yet. There's a few days upcoming that are questionable. I got 3 things going on in this direction. So,
But you have the buses to go there.
Yeah, it's just the licensed drivers. Yeah, I mean, we don't have to get a bus if that's, just we've been trying to stick to that every other year, so we update our fleet, but our 5 in reserve are good to go.
We were off because we couldn't get one the one year.
Yep, we missed a year in there.
So we missed
Yep.
a year getting
Yep.
one.
Yep, we did. A long while, when I first started, we tried to get 2 some years. We haven't done that for a long time. I don't know that we'd be in a position to get 2 next year, but. Bruce and I can certainly talk more about that.
yeah, nor do I think we would probably need to. I mean, if we see enrollment come up, different things, but.
Are we running the same amount of bus routes that we were with 80 less kids?
I think we took 1 out.
But our type 3s go up, and a lot of those drivers help with those type 3s. So it might not be, taking as many buses out, but the drivers are still going to get our type 3 kids to and from.
Can you take other students in those, or can it only be?
For type
You know what I'm
3,
saying? Yeah.
it's supposed to be kids with special transportation needs.
So they have to have like a IEP or
Correct.
level 4?
Correct.
IEP with special transportation written in there, yeah, has to be written in there.
And how often do those get looked at?
Yearly.
Yearly.
So they're
If,
reevaluated?
and some sooner, but yearly at minimum.
And we can use them for sports, right? Because that's happening.
If they're purchased with special ed dollars, which we have a couple vehicles that have been, there needs to be some special ed kids on board. Most of our, I think we have 2 that have been purchased that way. The rest of ours have been bought with general ed money, so it can be used for
So
anything.
that's fine.
Yeah, that is something we could do, which I guess I'll save that when we get to transportation stuff.
How much do we spend with Scred?
It's a good, I don't know that dollar amount off the top of my head.
And our costs continue to go up with Scred.
Yeah, they have salaries and inflation and things like that too. If we ever left, we could never hire the staff that Scred provides to cover the needs of our special ed kids. We'd have to have OT, PT, special ed director probably. I'm not even thinking of all the names, but I'm guessing even if it was cheaper, we'd never find all those positions. It'd be really hard to do, so that's one benefit of being in that co-op is, yes, we spend, but we have all those high need, unique cases covered. But I can get that dollar, I don't know that dollar amount off the top of my head.
But as I understand it from asking in years past, when we weren't the superintendent, we have to be a part of something. So then we would have to go like to Rum River, no?
I don't know if we have to, but we would have to have all those resources depending on who's enrolled and what their IEPs say and, having special ed administrators. We get a lot of education, the 3 administrators on special ed law, but we didn't go to special ed school for our degree. I'd be a little nervous.
And it's huge for us, like, the people that we can contact and get answers for, like, instantaneously, and making sure that we are following the law. Because, I mean, that's what you run into when you have IEPs, these are
Federal documents.
federally legal documents that you have to follow.
So it probably keeps us out of a lot of lawsuits. To be honest, like that's what they do on that support side of When those kids who are serviced by an IEP find themselves in a difficult situation, they're the experts in it. So that's where we're able to kind of tap into some deeper education and supports.
What about the services for PT and OT? How often do you see that? I mean, because they're split between multiple school districts.
Yeah, they're generally overseeing all 6 SCRED districts, so a lot of their support is indirect. So they're working with our special ed teachers to have the know-how how to like work with their PT or their OT, or they're working with the day teacher. Most of those, 90%, are indirect services. So there's some that are seen 6 times a year, there's some that are seen 3 times a year. It just kind of really depends on the need of the student.
Now, didn't they also have an issue with having their, the school psychologists? Do they have school psychologists on staff?
We have
We have
2.
We have 2 this year.
Okay, because didn't they have to hire essentially through a temp agency there for a bit?
Last year, we had a
Yeah.
virtual school.
Yeah, we had virtual
Yep.
school psych.
Yep. Other questions you have or thoughts? I'll probably bring some of these or some ideas. It doesn't necessarily have to be these, but like I said, you may start seeing some reductions as quick as our next meeting, but any other feedback as we, or ultimately I build the budget for next year?
I think you should have some options about going below the 25 if necessary. Not saying that we're gonna, but I'd hate to see it go down to 20. I mean,
Do a lot of schools have ranges? Like, ours is very specific. Are there some schools that have like ranges of like, we'd like to keep it between like 20 and 25% so you can kind of keep those numbers aligned?
Good question, I don't know. I can research that.
The other thing is there a plan in case federal funding is lost?
I haven't heard we're gonna lose it. I mean, if federal funding is gone, I mean, that's another $400,000 or $500,000. I haven't heard that. But, so no, I don't currently have a plan for that if that happened. But everything I've heard is that we are not losing that money. That's what I have on that topic, yep.
Is that it? All right, then we're gonna move on to co-op transportation.
So a very similar document to what we had last month. I had our community education coordinator and activities director pull up some numbers, which I've heard may not be perfectly accurate. But these are the numbers that they gave me. These are grades, this year's grades, so 24-25 students. What I was told is girls hockey for high school is 712. Boys hockey's 10-12. Wrestling can be 7-12, and gymnastics is 7-12. I know we have some gymnasts who do participate that are not on this list, but I believe it's because they are in an independent gymnastics or something not affiliated with the school. I think, as having a little conversation today, I wonder if our boys hockey numbers are not accurate because they go through Pine City's community education, and the same would maybe be for girls hockey. But these are the numbers that I ran as far as how many kids, if we did it this year, what grades they'd be in, and assuming they all move forward. Having some other conversations, I do think if transportation was provided, these numbers would likely go up. Don't know about all 4 sports, but I would anticipate them growing if transportation was provided. I know specifically the person I talked to, they was talking about wrestling, that more kids who did stop would likely come back. We talked about cost one way. I guess that's what I heard the board was more supportive of than going both ways. So if you go, these are high-end costs if we provided one way. I think especially if we were going south, wrestling, hockey, and gymnastics, they wouldn't be 3 different standalones. They would maybe be combined together, so those costs would likely not be as high, but without knowing which kids are going, that's how we ran the numbers, and same on the bottom for if a bus was to be provided. I was starting to talk about a little bit, just if the board had asked me to look at this, if we needed to buy type 3 transportation, which depending on numbers, we could have to buy up to 2, one going south, one going north, one way to fund one of them. We do have some MA money, which kind of go back to the last conversation, has to be used on special ed. We could buy another vehicle for special ed and repurpose another one. If we needed 2 type 3 vehicles, first of all, the MA money, we have about 27,000, and at least the last couple vans we bought were 34,000, somewhere around there, 32,000. So it wouldn't quite cover the entire purchase of one van. If we needed to buy a second, that's roughly 35,000, more than that. I do think it is something that would be good to do first. I struggle when we had just talked about needing to cut up to $800,000 or more, putting ads in place. I hear, the 4 different groups, 3 different sports, and their requests. I just struggle with the unknowns and adding potential costs to our district. But the board wanted to bring this back this month. I do worry on the flip side, we don't want to lose more kids. I get that completely, but with our budget being where it's at, I just struggle recommending making any ad, even if it's one that would be good for some students. And I do think this would be good. I just struggle with adding or recommending to add more cost when we're looking to cut over $800,000.
Can I speak to hockey on that? Can I be the hockey spokesperson to give some information on the hockey column?
Are you just giving us numbers?
And also just to say it doesn't really apply to hockey in the same way it would. Like I would focus more on building like wrestling that's going to be here as a sport. That like now is the time to bring that back. I love wrestling. My brother was a wrestler. I managed it here too, and I think that is doable. Our hockey timing for it to even need busing.
Yeah.
No, I have an 8th grader who may get pulled up to JV next year. So you're looking at the earliest as like freshman year, even mattering. And what we also know is they have to leave class early. So you're looking at schedules not even matching there with practice times. So I guess I would focus more attention on the wrestling group. And yes, the numbers are not accurate. There are a few more hockey players in there, but youth time doesn't matter. It's all over the place. And we're grateful to have sports costs covered to the extent that they are, where for us, transportation is not.
You talking boys or girls hockey?
Both.
Both, okay.
But primarily right now, boys.
And they go to Pine City.
Yes, and my daughter would be a 7th grader here playing hockey also, but that's also not something that I would ask the school to get into transport for girls. I kind of have our own thing to figure out. So, I would, that makes sense.
So really it would be,
A lack of getting funding or transport is not gonna affect.
If it was
our kids'
Just wrestling, that, you know,
I'd say focus more on wrestling and building that as a sport that is here, that how can we get that?
if it was just wrestling and we took type 3, it'd be almost 3,000. If we ended up needing to take a bus, because numbers went up, it would be 10,000, a little over 10,000.
But I'm saying so all but girls hockey are sub.
Correct.
They would take one bus, it would leave right after school, right? I mean, it's really just a gymnastics number to look at on the high end, because they would ride in the same vehicle. Am I right?
That would be
And
yes.
Like, it's not three
No,
separate
we
totals,
drop,
it's one
if we did it,
bus.
we'd go to Pine City, drop off wrestling and hockey, then go to Rush City, drop off gymnastics.
So the most it
driver
would be
comes.
would be that 14,000. Right? With the bus.
With the bus, yeah.
Because we wouldn't be taking separate vehicles.
The issue with the bus, just, which we talked about, if, not even just the cost, is it's hard to find licensed CDL drivers, and all of our current drivers are en route. So that would be the hard part, not that it's impossible, but if everything was the same from now to September or whenever, winter season started, hard to find drivers with CDL license. I did also find out, I had someone find out what our other co-op schools do. I did hear from Mora. Mora does provide transportation for swimming and for, I don't remember what else, hockey, girls hockey that they co-op with, and Rush City told me they co-op with Bram, which I didn't know that, but they co-op with Bram and do provide transportation for those. I asked them both if they had a minimum, because we had talked about that last month. Mora said no, and Rush City didn't answer that question.
Rush City, Bram, wrestling, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, it's kind of split almost 50-50, like they practice at Rush and they practice at Bram. Half are at Bram, the meets, half are at Rush City.
Yeah, once they got the numbers up to a more equal
Yeah.
number, then they split the practices.
Wednesdays, they stay at their home.
Yeah.
Where we were at home.
I think we used to do it that way. Right? Am I right? And Hinckley and Pine City used to split it? Or was it always?
That was kind of the gray area,
Okay.
where I wasn't quite around there.
Yeah.
But it used to be when I coached, when I was 21, 22.
That is true.
You did, Pine City strictly came to Hinckley, that was it. And then Hinckley started having more wrestlers and and we ended up having to go back down there. But like I said earlier, last month, if we can get numbers, they are fully willing to split that time. Some here, some down there.
Practice time. Yep.
Yes,
Yep.
so that would cut your costs literally in half again too, it just.
Yep.
You can look at that, transporting 2 days is likely with that, because they talked about mimicking the Rush City Bram. So 2 days a week, the Hinckley kids would go to Pine City, 2 days a week, the Pine City kids would come here, and then Wednesdays, you practice in your own location.
And I'll take that responsibility of trying to get those numbers up here, all right? Just need a little bit of help on the front side.
What would it cost for 2 days a week?
And this is if the cost for hiring, what if there's a volunteer driver? Are we
Then it
able to
would just
use a
be
volunteer driver?
Then it would just be if it's just paying for gas really at that point, and if we had to buy a vehicle, but all this FICA, I don't even remember what WC stands for. Thank you, work comp. It's just paying the gas and the mileage and then whatever wear and tear, but yeah.
And if there's a volunteer, does that affect hired staff having the opportunity to drive if they wanted to?
I guess it's up to the school board. I mean, I will say all of our current hired people are driving.
Yeah.
I mean, we would have to hire, if we were gonna hire, we'd have to hire someone specific for this, or in conjunction with something else.
So I don't think it would affect our current
Yeah,
drivers, because they're already driving.
they're already being
So-
utilized.
All the practices happen right after school, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so.
That's what we're going after, just get them down there at 3 o'clock or 3:15, 3:30. We're good from there.
So just get them there.
Yes, just getting them there, that's it.
And we did have somebody offer to drive, to volunteer their time to drive. That would be like a type 3 vehicle. If it changed to a bus, I'm not sure if that person would be willing to go and get their bus license, but as it stood right now, there was one person willing to drive the route south.
And how many students can?
Seven can fit in our vans, 7 students, 6.
Well, we can get 9 if, I mean, that's full. I mean, it's not like we're going a long way.
Right.
9 including the driver, so it'd be 8 participants.
You guys know anything about the volunteer, or a person that has volunteered to drive? You heard anything about that?
Yes.
Okay.
I think I know.
He spoke to both Mandy and I too, so
Okay. So it could be more than one person?
it's probably the same person.
It's the
Oh,
same, I
probably
think
the
it's the
same
same person.
Okay.
Yeah, they would need to do a background.
Yeah.
All done.
And
Everything's
it's all
done.
done.
Everything's done.
So we're not talking a whole lot of money for them volunteer.
But what if a bus is, are they willing to get there?
So
I know
for
that-
this
That's
next,
another
maybe
question.
you know. So for this next
I mean, because
year,
if
we're
these numbers
probably-
truly are gonna go up, I mean, 7's not a lot of kids.
No, you're
Even
right.
8, like,
No.
we're
and-
looking at a bus here, we're not looking at a type 3.
But would it,
That's-
would we be just looking at a type 3 for next year? And then the following year, if it goes up, then we have to explore the other options for a bus,
Most
is what it seems like to
Most
me.
likely, because then when the word gets out of like, hey, like this is actually a feasible thing.
But that would even happen this year.
It's a
Like,
great
it
thought.
doesn't take
It could.
very long to hit 7. I mean,
Well, especially if we're doing wrestling, hockey, and gymnastics.
right. Once they find out there's transportation,
Yeah.
we have to plan on a bus, like, the.
For that word to get out, so
Yeah.
it would be like, oh, for next year. It could,
Like, what happens if we can't find somebody to drive a bus?
You don't.
I mean,
Our routes take precedence, our routes would take precedence over driving to practice.
we've had to cancel other athletic things, from very rare, but last year we had to cancel other athletic things because we gotta prioritize getting kids home. That might have been 2 years ago. 2 years ago.
Hey Joe, do you know if that volunteer was willing to take wrestling, gymnastics, everything? The whole
I
route?
spoke to him about it, and I told him it can't be like a one-shot deal all the way down, so boom, 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 and come back, and
Perfect.
it sounded like he was okay with that.
yeah, that's how I understood it as well, and verified that, so.
Awesome.
Though there's no gymnastics on here, but if they heard it was, obviously
could
I
be,
get it,
yeah.
if they hear there is transportation, maybe they would, but as of right now, there's isn't.
I agree with Angela, you almost gotta have 2 numbers here, one with just a few kids, and then 3 months later, you get a whole bunch more. Are we prepared to go to the higher number?
I mean, we have
Yeah,
to plan
totally.
for
We'd
it.
we'd have to plan for these numbers
So we
down
need to
here.
find, I mean, that's great that somebody wants to volunteer, but in reality, it's gonna be,
Yeah, you'd have to plan.
I mean, we hope it's a bus.
Which is a great thing, you know.
Right.
The most, gymnastics being the
You can't
furthest,
compete anymore.
or girls hockey, those are the 2 numbers with the
After 3
bus
weeks, you can't compete.
that we'd be looking at.
Brian, that's your tab for if the driver's staying too.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry.
These are the 2 numbers, the 25,000 if we had to take a bus to girls, thanks Joe. 25,000 for girls hockey, up to 14,000 for gymnastics, because they just would go all the way to Rush City and come back. And the added, if the board decides to, I would think we would have to buy at least 1 type 3 vehicle. If we're throwing girls hockey in there, probably 2. Like I said, 1 could probably mostly be covered with MA dollars, which doesn't come out of our general fund or our fund balance. It's a restricted fund balance. But there's a possibility we'd have to buy up to 2 vehicles.
Which could be used for other things during the day.
Could be used for other things.
and other things would come.
Back in
I think Joe is volunteering to get his
No,
type
I-
A license.
I wanted,
Yeah.
I have robotics in the winter, so I'm a little busy, but I'm gonna make a shameless plug that, you know, there's a lot of other schools that I go to that also have 15 passenger vehicles for some reason. Or 12, it makes it type 3. I know we fight about this all the time, I'm just saying, like, somehow, in some way, shape, or form, they're doing something special that we are not.
And they're not private schools, they're public schools.
You drive down to Rush City and I took a picture and I sent I sent it to Brian when we were.
Every time he goes somewhere, he sends me a
I
picture.
sent a picture of this thing, and I'm sure that maybe they have to have their little bus license or something too, but a bus license with a 15-passenger van that I could use for robotics, I would definitely consider my options.
I do think you'd have to have your bus license.
I'd consider my options for that.
Oh, Bruce.
Well, he did raise his hand for it. So
All
are you,
right, so
so you're volunteering for your bus license, Joe?
What?
That's
You're
right.
volunteering to get your bus license?
If I could take it to robotics and do it, I would.
Uh,
long as they put a trailer hitch on it,
$160 a day.
Without being a driver.
Yeah.
And make
can
Bruce's
see it
life
already.
easier, I don't have to take all three of his.
Times, that's mileage, yep, times 52 round trips. So,
So, but then earlier, so Tiffany had mentioned not being as concerned about the girls' hockey because they're figuring something out. So then I would probably take that off of my mind, but then I've also had the question posed to me that I had mentioned earlier with girls' hockey is why is girls' hockey connected with Moose Lake, not Pine City? Is that something to be evaluated?
maybe not at this board meeting.
No, but like for down like
It's years
1
and
to
years
4.
and years.
yeah, I don't remember the why.
Bonnie maybe remembers the why.
Pine City's recent, I mean, girls hockey is within the last, what, 4 or 5 years?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just that down the road, you know, if we're looking at doing a bus, would it make sense to
Have everyone
take and go
going.
along the way?
The only thing I can
Yeah.
think about is having to go double A
You
instead
probably
of
wanna
A, but
strangle me right now, sorry.
And you have to
My
give
job
them,
is
we'd have to give them
Yeah.
their.
Yeah, and so some of the students that aren't here probably wouldn't even qualify for girls' hockey riding the bus, and that would be a year, 2 years down the road.
I can review my memory with Bonnie and try to remember the why.
Sorry, but that was a question that was just
Yeah,
posed to me.
yep.
Yeah.
I know what I've heard, but
It wouldn't take much for jogging my memory.
Okay. Co-op transportation. Is there any more questions? If not, I am looking for a motion.
I don't think I know how to word it right, but I would make the motion to approve moving forward with co-op transportation
For one way.
for one way.
In the type 3.
I mean, the goal I think is to grow it. And then I think if we grow it, we keep these students here. And I know it's like one of those risks, you know, like we're looking at budget and it's really tough, but if we can keep students here, I mean, we've exhausted a lot of different options of enrollment and what we can do. And there is a need, like we're hearing the need. If we can keep the students that we have here, and if sports is that reason, I think it's worth a shot.
Do you have any statistics on, you mentioned last time sometimes they give a precedent, you go to basketball. Do a lot of families move to another district?
Yes.
So last year, we can only speak to the wrestlers that we lost from 6th to 7th grade last year, but we had 2 different families that.
2 families?
2 families,
And
so
what,
it was
only
5
wrestlers?
kids.
We
5
lost-
kids of wrestlers that switched.
I mean,
Well,
it
And it was
Six
two
students?
didn't wrestle, but
Well, we had 5 wrestlers and 1 hockey, so there's 6 kids that left our school district last year.
moving from 6th grade to 7th grade, which is the hardest year because that's
And
what.
they got up and moved their household to the other
They
district?
didn't move, they just switched.
No, they
They
opened
just
it.
opened it,
Yep.
Yeah.
They
So
just switched.
they still live in Hinckley.
So
They just
then-
went to Pine City and they're tomorrow.
So then that family is transporting them to that school?
The school picks up,
Yep,
Laura's
this-
picking up And then, I don't know.
The Pine City, I think Pine City will pick him up right here. He lives just across the street, you know. So the school will pick him up right here at the high school, and then they drive down to Pine City. The Mora, she works there, so she's able to just bring him to school. But yeah, the bus will bring them right to their house, yeah.
So they don't have to move?
No,
none of
didn't
them.
have to
Be a
move.
student?
Didn't have to move.
They just switched schools.
And that's, like I said, that's every year, every couple of years, you lose a handful of kids to that.
Or you have the kids that quit wrestling because they
Yeah.
can't.
And so
Oh, sorry.
with that,
Are you
it is not going to take away from transportation. I mean, that's just a given, right?
Yes,
That it doesn't take away from our transportation
getting our
needs.
kids,
Well, we legally have to get our kids home after
Right.
yeah,
school.
would come first.
Right. So if we don't find a driver, this doesn't happen.
It doesn't work,
So
but I
the,
think we give it a shot.
No, right.
Yeah.
I'm just
so
clarifying that.
factor of safety here, we almost have to budget the school bus and a driver. Because we want it to grow.
Yeah,
So if
I-
it does grow, we gotta be prepared with the budget.
Yep.
That's what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I would like to, with no minimum. Because if it's that situation where, you know, if we say with a minimum of 5 kids, and say we have, you know, that
Well,
many
then
signed
we usually
up.
take 3 and it'd be
and-
less money.
Yeah, but then we're not hurting families that have chosen to stay in the district because of sports and then finding out that, sorry, we don't have enough to participate, so that would be my motion, if that makes sense.
I'd second that motion.
Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Let's move on. We are moving on to daycare.
I met with a couple board members, with a community member, staff member, who came to us and asked if we'd be willing to open a daycare at Hinckley Elementary School. We had a follow-up meeting with the same 2 board members and Mrs. Scullard. Some of the reasons, and I just chose some of them, the individual shared a lot of the things we've heard, that Hinckley really needs a daycare. We just talked about a little bit ago that there's only 1, maybe 2 locally that are often filled, or there's not spots. We know from previous conversations when we were talking about Finlayson that there's quite a need for daycare in all of Pine County, but Hinckley as well. We believe Hinckley will have open classrooms next year, 4 or maybe, we don't know all that yet, but we think there'll be 4 classrooms that could be open next year. The person who came forward was willing to be the point person, was willing to help the district with writing an application, was willing to work as a daycare provided by the district. There would be some needs. There's probably more than I just have on this. We know we would need a playground that's appropriate for birth to 4 years old. That if the board was on favor of that, we kind of need that anyway at Hinckley Elementary and really Finlayson Elementary anyway, as our playgrounds are appropriate for grade ages 6 and up. So that'd be a 2-part benefit. We know we would need some cots, classroom supplies, and probably fencing around the playground. There's probably other costs, but those were the ones that I know about for sure. We talked back in August about costs roughly for staff and rates that we could charge, which this is what Anna had shared with us. So it's why it says Finlayson, is that's just what it said roughly. And we were looking at toddlers at the time. But roughly we were looking at salaries for teacher, and we called them assistant teacher, classroom aide. Again, depending how many students we have, how many staff we have. At the time, Anna kind of broke that up. If we had 1 classroom, she broke it up. If we have 2 classrooms, so just doing math, if we had up to 4 classrooms, that number could be double. Now, most of that would be funded for by families. We would have to build it. We wouldn't necessarily hire 2 classrooms if we didn't have kids for 2 classrooms. And then she ran rates for us with anywhere if we charged $170 an hour, which I believe is what the county reimburses. A day, I'm sorry. Sorry. Yeah, no, yeah. But commonly in the area, you know, I've heard that you could charge 240, 250, maybe more, but these were the numbers that Anna had pulled for us back in August. She put down the 80% revenue just for attendance, but you can kind of see what the revenue would be based on how many kids come in. The other tab I shared also came from Anna, was just some data that she had shared with us about child care centers, what the ratio of staff to child would be. This person who came forward was interested in working with any age group or all age groups is kind of what she said. And then you can kind of see what the rates of some local daycares around us, what they're charging families. So as we met with the individual, we talked about just kind of what the process would be, and the first process, which the board had talked about 3 years ago, approved. Then we got to August and didn't do it, but we talked about now, should we apply to run our own daycare out of Hinckley Elementary School? And while we're going through that application, kind of do some more investigation into costs, maybe put a survey out. I don't know perfectly how to do that survey because I don't know everyone who's having infants, but put a survey out to the community to see what the need is in Hinckley. Not voting on this tonight, but just the thought was to have a conversation as a board tonight to see if you're interested, and then maybe go as quickly as voting on applying to open or run a daycare at our next board meeting in April. The individual we met with did meet with Leslie Sauter and Anna Reiser. It sounded from that conversation that the grant that we had talked a lot about was not available to us. I will say I took a text today. Not much came out of it, just kind of wondering if we were doing it, and I said we're discussing if we want to consider doing it tonight. But wondering the board's thoughts or what information you'd want me to gather as we lead to kind of 2 weeks from now if we want to talk about applying to run a daycare at Hinckley Elementary School. And certainly the board members that were with me can add in. Bonnie was with, can add in. That's my summary.
Well, we did a lot of talking here about one in Finlayson, and actually before that. I'm not sure who came up with these statistics, but at that time, there was a need for 200 daycare children in Hinckley and 75 in Finlayson. Now, as other ones have been built, like in Sandstone, if that number's come down, I'm not sure the radius they were talking, if it was just school-age kids or families that are in the school. I don't know how they got to 200 or the 75. But they stressed a number of times, in a number of meetings I've been at with Leslie Sauter and Pine County Group, it is the #1 economic driver in a community. It's the #1. And you talk to a lot of people who travel a long ways for good daycares. Not to mention a daycare teaches these youngsters so many things, it's hard to believe. 2 years old, they know the alphabet, they know colors, they start to read and identify their name, and they've got a real jump on education. Probably help our grade point average, make all the teachers more successful, all those things. It just brings the quality of students up. It becomes a driver for attendance in school. That's what I got.
So the daycare grants, then there must be 2 other facilities, because that daycare grant was Pine Technical Community College, and then it was meant for 3.
Yeah, it was a mystery. They wouldn't tell us who the third one could be.
Or the second or third. Right?
We believe that they are going to open a site in Hinckley. What we've heard is they don't have, and I don't know, I haven't heard this with my own ears, but what I've heard is they may open a site in Hinckley, they don't know who's gonna run it. And I heard the third part went to Willow River, for their daycare that's in the school.
Oh, Willow River's gonna have a daycare as well.
Any idea how many children are there?
I don't know. I can find that out though.
Bonnie, you don't know, do you?
I don't know.
Well, they were going to offer us 30,000 for the Finlayson thing if we voted, but we voted it down. So we lost the 30,000, because we didn't, as a board, think that 30,000 was enough to make it start up.
Are those other grants still available with the, there's a couple other organizations that.
The donations?
Yes.
I don't know that.
I don't know that. There may be other grants out there, I don't know.
We could ask about the
We
donations.
could
But there
ask.
was
Could ask
this,
about the two
wasn't one
donations.
donation 10,000 and what was the second one?
That was for
But it was
the,
for
all of it was for the Finlayson donation.
Okay,
'Cause
so
this is
that would
just-
maybe not be available if it went to Hinckley. How does,
So with looking at it at the school, would it be year-round? Are we thinking?
The individual said they'd be willing to be open year-round and days off, other than probably holidays.
Bonnie, what are your thoughts at Hinckley?
I think there's things we would have to think about, like, I think it's a great idea to start there. I think having something on site, something close to the freeway, so, I mean, you're not gonna get just our school kids there, you're gonna get community members that are driving to wherever for work. I think it's a good entry point into our school. Obviously, the thing I look at is the educational component of the rest of the kids in the school and how do we, like, divide and conquer per se. The end of the building that I'd be looking at for that would be, we could seclude them there. We have an area that we could turn into a playground for that age of student. I think bathrooms it'd be a wonky thing, but we could make it work. I guess the one thing I might dabble with down the road would be a secured entrance just for the daycare people, so they're not like going through the whole building as they're dropping off at all different hours, but is it doable? Absolutely.
Would it be less cost to have it at Hinckley than Finlayson?
Less cost?
Like a startup cost?
I'm guessing probably similar. I guess I don't know that. Like Finlayson, we would have had to, we were talking about removing the band room, putting them somewhere else. I think the rooms were there, but location of other classrooms were needed to be moved. These classrooms will be empty, just due to some enrollment issues anyway, so we don't have that additional cost. The playground does need to be done. I worked with a couple vendors this week. We could get a really decent startup for about 40,000. And it's not huge, but it does, in that space, at least allows us to build onto that in due time. And like Brian said, we need something for our preschool anyway, because
I think the cost would be pretty similar,
guess.
depending how many rooms we open and what kind of fencing apparatus, we'd need to put around for safety. A benefit, every room, I believe, am I accurate when I say every room already has sink, so we wouldn't have that problem. And bathrooming, I don't know what all the rules are if we were going down to infant, but bathrooming would work. We'd have to figure out if our food service could feed, I'm sure there's some rules between what MDE covers and what they don't cover. I don't know if they go all the way down to toddler probably who's eating, but we'd have to investigate that. But I'm sure other schools do it, so I'm sure there's some kind of framework to figure that out.
Well, I'm sure.
To get it started according to the application, for playground equipment, the only thing that's needed is 3 pieces of durable outdoor large muscle equipment per group. So we don't even have to start up, it doesn't have to be a huge expense.
I guess we just have to cross that with MDE, because if our preschool kids are gonna be using it as well.
We've been
Would have
getting
to-
by with,
I know we've been getting by, but we're lying, we shouldn't be.
Maybe I missed it, but
Well-
was it said like what age groups? we were-
that's
Birth
toddler
to-
through,
Oh,
toddler and then preschool, it says.
Okay,
3
so
pieces.
not
The
infant?
No, the
Oh.
new Hinckley, isn't it birth up?
Oh, yeah, what?
Because this
Oh,
is
we
the
haven't talked, I don't
thinnest.
know, I don't know
I
what,
guess I don't
Oh,
know
okay.
I assume they're opening birth up, but I don't know that for fact.
Okay.
And I don't know for sure when they'll be ready to open.
Wait, are we talking about the Hinckley side or?
I'm talking about the Hinckley one.
Ours or
Yeah,
the
if
one with the
we-
grant?
If we did, no, if we did it here at the elementary school, was there like?
We heard before application takes 6 months. We don't know that for fact, so if we started in April, what's 6 months from then, October-ish, maybe September, October, we could be ready?
I'm thinking age group, like,
What we had
Was
talked
it
about
birth?
that day, I hear you.
Thanks for
What we
understanding.
talked about that day was like,
I'm lost.
we would like to start an infant room,
infant.
a toddler room, and school age room.
Okay.
Like,
So
because
it could
we are
service a
looking
full
at-
family that
Yeah.
had,
we're gonna have to take our 4-year-old program down to 4 days a week, so then that 5th day, they're gonna need somewhere to go.
okay,
They talked about only charging when the kids were there, so you're not running into the same daycare issues that some of our families were running into in the past.
So you said-
If we had kids to, fit that bill.
So potentially 3 rooms? Right? Is that what you just said?
That's what
Infant,
I
toddler,
remember
preschool.
hearing.
So then how many staff would be required for 3 rooms?
I think it depends on the
Depends
number.
on the
Depends how
numbers.
many kids.
Yeah, so it's, but.
And then square footage of the room as well.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of compared to what the Pine County site was gonna look like, and I think our rooms will be fine. We'd have to get Melvin in to do some accurate measuring, but. Look like
it
we
was,
gotta be
I
real
know
close
it's
to it.
35 square feet per child, but I don't know that was, what age that was.
I think it's like 6.
Those infants, I think.
8,
Or
9,
how big the rooms are that you have.
I believe preschool is 782 square feet, toddler 594, and infant 376.
For
And that was
those
per
numbers.
how many kids?
Probably for those numbers.
That's
For
the 1 to
these
4,
rates.
1 to
That's
4,
the
1 to
ratio.
7, 1 to 10. Same ratios up there.
So you need at least 3 staff and then somebody overseeing it, so 4?
Probably 4, if we had 3 rooms, probably at least 4 staff,
At least
just to give them breaks and so, daycare doesn't run on just an 8-hour shift. Some start at 6 a.m., some might get picked up at 6, depending on our hours, but I would think if we had 3 rooms, at least 4 staff.
Is there any advantage, excuse me, of the operator that runs the program, of them basically leasing the rooms and they take over all the operation for like $1 a year? Would there be any advantage to the owner of that thing? I don't know, Sarah, can you answer that? Or would you?
It wouldn't be, I don't think it'd be an owner, I think it'd be a staff member.
Okay,
So it'd be a district-led.
okay, but what if it's not a district employee, just a personal person that we
Like if
basically?
a private person came in with their license, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, basically if we gave them like free rent or something.
Yeah, I guess.
It would look different because it would be, if it's in the elementary school, it'd be more of center instead of a home base. And with home base, it's like 1 adult to like 2 infants, 3 toddlers and like 3 preschoolers. But if you put it in a spot where there's gonna be a lot of children, you'd have to have an adult for each ratio of that child in each, do you know what I mean?
So it would not be a benefit for, okay.
So for a center, there's more, the ratios are different.
Mm-hmm.
They're higher.
You got me the name at the end of the day. It's BBE. BBE.
I think it's a good idea that we do something. I thought the Finlayson was a good idea also.
Is there more information, Leo, or anyone that, if we have this as an action item to apply, that you want answered? Or as best I can do in 2 weeks?
Is there any cost involved in applying for grants?
2 years ago, for grants or for the daycare?
Whatever, or, yeah.
2 years ago when we approved applying, it was $500. I don't know if that's gone up since then or not.
So it would
I
just,
would like to know if the playground, if we could discuss the school garden as the playground, if, the fencing is, up to par.
Yeah.
I don't think the fencing would be, the posts would be, but the
So you
fencing
could
would.
just replace the.
Yeah, I don't know what you need for fencing around there that's, because right now it's essentially chicken wire.
You see a lot of them with just a cyclone fence, that wire put together.
Is anything happening with the school garden?
The weeds grow really, really well. I've asked for somebody to,
And it's just,
want to do something that it just, it's.
so it's not being used somewhere
No.
else?
So it would be actually a really great space for our preschool playground. AKA daycare program.
And is
So
that
we
in
could do-
close proximity to the buildings?
Close enough, yeah. I mean, definitely doable.
That's good exercise to walk that
Yeah.
wherever it is, if it's in the back.
So it doesn't say how far a fenced in area has to be.
From
the facility. I didn't
If they took
I
the
didn't
hardware
see
closet
it
down.
about that,
Yeah,
but
I didn't
don't
see
know.
anything, but think about it.
A lot of them are just attached to the building, they use part of the building as a
Right.
fence.
No, that's what I was wondering, if it's a ways away, is there any,
Oh, if it's too far?
yeah, like what's the, I didn't see anything.
We can hold off later about talking about building a new gym, because that'd be alright too, but we can wait on that. Let's go to the playground for now. I mean, we need one, be cool.
Well, if you think of any other questions, you can always let Brian know. Obviously, we'll have this on the April, board meeting.
Yep.
Does anybody have any other questions? I should have asked that first before Otherwise, we're gonna go on to, the school weapons policy 501.
Yeah, I'm putting this now because it's a mandated policy that I can't find a link to anywhere. And the last paper copy I can find is from 2004. So just doing a first reading, this is coming right from MSBA. We follow this, but we need to have the policy available to us, so.
But I did sign it in 2022.
You did?
I sent it to you.
And the link you sent, when I go to open it.
There's just not a
It
link.
doesn't exist, so I can't find it anywhere other than 2004, so we need to get that approved, so any questions on this policy?
If not, we will be approving it at the April board meeting.
Yes.
And we're at the end. I'm just looking for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll make the motion.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor? Opposed?